Well, guys, I am joined here by a man, who I like to describe as so good looking and so perfect that he could throw up on a woman and she'd say, "Do it again." Yeah. Bonus points for
That's
anyone who
happened a
gets that
couple of
reference.
times.
What?
That's happened a couple of times.
Okay, well, that's completely, driven the intro I had in my head right out of my mind. So you can introduce yourself since you brought the conversation in that direction.
All right, my real name is Cody Red, but I go by my pen name FC Marrow. I
Mhm.
do that for a couple reasons. I write children's books, but I also write very not children's books, and
Mhm.
I want to be able to keep those two things separate. Because if somebody searches one of my children's books, I don't want them to find Wicker Hill. As such, that's why I use both names.
And people may have recognized the picture from the Spartacus video. And also, he was kind enough to do a voiceover for my Prince video on the Beauty and the Beast section, which is his favorite Disney film. So, well, I mean, we have Cody here because, well, we both released two books. Was Wicker Hill your first novel, or?
Wicker Hill's my first novel, yes.
Yeah, so we both just released our first novels and we have our second ones coming up soon. And yeah, we've joked that we're twin souls because, you have Wicker Hill, which is a very sort of Lovecraftian erotic horror released, and then you also have a children's book. Whereas I just released The Shallow Ocean, which is a very Little Prince-esque children's book, and now I'm about to bring out Joanna and the 12 Crowns, which is, I mean, it's not really, that different, but it's more kind of, I lean more towards sort of like hard PG for that one, and even though we don't rate books the same way we do films.
But I think you and I both are heavily influenced cinematically,
Oh,
more
definitely, yeah.
maybe even more than literally or literary.
Literarily,
But
yeah.
so
Someone
I
in the
mean,
comments, please, please
yes, what
clarify
is the
that.
word for that? Says the two authors. What is the word? But I think we both lean cinematic. And I mean, we both made like cast our book videos, and I think it's just, I think it's a good thing. Honestly, it means we're very visual, and
Mhm.
so I understand the PG rating thing because I know Wicker Hill's a hard R. And I also love that about our relationship. It's that we're both cut from the same cloth in a
Mhm.
lot of ways, but our cloth is both cloths are dyed very differently. Like mine's like a bright blood red, and yours is like this almost
Please don't say
I would
pink.
no, I wasn't gonna say pink. It's almost like a color you can't see. Like it's like this mystical thing. I don't know, it's a beautiful color that I can't even like really describe. But it's like you have this very fairy tale-esque and very passionate like lean into that fairy tale style. And mine is like almost, it's not almost, it is grotesque horror in a lot
Mhm.
of places. But it's also very heavily character driven, very heavily story driven and plot driven. So we're both very much cut from the same cloth with two very completely different colors, and I love that about our relationship.
No, yeah. And when it comes to Wicker Hill, do you want to give like a brief explanation of the plot? And I mean, because I'm just like so fascinated by every time you tell me a little more thing about it. I'm just like, this is amazing.
So Wicker Hill is oh, also thank you for letting me go first. We
Hmm.
might get to yours today.
That's okay.
We're absolutely getting to yours today. Wicker Hill is a literary erotic horror with Lovecraftian and psychological horror leanings, but it is very much at its core and more than anything else character driven. You don't hear that a lot in horror. There aren't a lot of character driven horror stories. You have some stories with strong characters like Clarice from
Silence of the Lambs.
Silence of the Lambs.
Hmm.
Yes, Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, I suppose
But
Carrie
you
White as well.
and maybe to some extent the book It, also by Stephen
I was
King.
just about to say that.
It has a good ensemble of characters,
Hmm.
but you're talking about like masters of the craft when you talk
Hmm.
about Carrie and It and stuff like that, and Silence of the Lambs. But what I wanted to do is I am a very character-driven writer. I love the intricacies of dialogue and all of that other stuff, but I'm also a bit of a creepy creep, and I like really weird, creepy things. So what Wicker Hill is it's very much a character-driven story about a woman who goes to her childhood hometown to visit the grave of her estranged mother. Her mother abandoned her when she was 10, and she comes to terms with the fact that she's never going to be able to get over that trauma until she says goodbye, for real. So she goes to Wicker Hill and says to say goodbye to her mother's grave. and she ends up getting caught up into this Eldritch cult and finds out that she's a key component of that cult's ritual to awaken this Eldritch deity. And it is so much more than that on so many different levels that saying it that way almost feels like very baseline, very
Hmm.
surface level. But Wicker Hill is very much the culmination of like a decade and maybe 2 years worth of work, 2 years worth of storytelling. Like we're looking at 11 to 12 years of storytelling here, where it was all character building and lore building and all this other stuff, and it ended up being 630 pages, and that's with me killing my darling. So there's a reason this is planned to be a 4 book series, and that's exactly why.
I mean, some stories just need to be told that way. And I'd say it was a while ago. I think you either sent me a video or just yeah, I think it was a video of you kind of you had the music and you were narrating like a passage from the book, and the whole time I was listening to it, I was like, oh God, this is just because I remember I watched a video last year where someone was talking about flowers in the attic in that particular series, and she said
Mm-hmm.
that Virginia C. Andrews, or I think it's VC Andrews, well, she's almost like an entire genre on her own, and I think that's the same about
Yes.
you. I think FC Marrow is almost like its own entire genre, and that's kind of what it'll be known as.
And it's funny that you mentioned her because the two comparisons I've been getting the most is VC Andrews and
Hmm.
Clive Barker. Two completely different,
Hmm.
you're talking Clive Barker, Hellraiser, Hellbound Heart, and then, Flowers in the Attic.
Hmm.
But I mean, Wicker Hill and its entire series actually covers, a lot of the transgressive parts from both of those writers. And I'm not
Hmm.
a transgressive person. It's just like this excerpt, like this exorcism of demons. I've told Olivia that's what it feels like. It feels like an exorcism of demons
Hmm.
when I write. And when I write, every time somebody reads it or reads any of it, they're like, "Oh, this reminds me of Hellbound or Hellraiser." This, which is, of course, leaning back into that cinematic thing. And then other people are like, "This very much reminds me of Flowers in the Attic,"
Hmm.
because it's so character driven, but it's also like, "Holy shit! How could you possibly write that?" And that combination of things is very much my writing style. Like, as a matter of fact, we'll talk about this later, but the book that I'm currently writing is a zombie horror novel, but it's written as a family domestic drama. And it's like combining those two things and like meshing together these genres. I just absolutely love it. I love doing that.
What I think works, well, speaking as someone who read Flowers in the Attic at an age I probably shouldn't have, but even though like it deals with some really horrific things, there's a sort of like like with every kind of gothic things, there's a beauty and an elegance to the darkness as well, and I think that's why it's so
Yep.
compelling. And that's definitely what you have as well. It's like all this, even though from what you told me, it goes to some very dark places, there's still a sort of, beauty in the darkness, and that's really hard to do. Like not a lot of writers or even filmmakers are able to do that.
Right. And like the entire story. So I came up with all the ideas a decade ago,
Mhm.
literally. The character of Abigail came first,
Mhm.
Wicker Hill followed her, and everything just kind of built itself around her, which is why I have no doubt that no matter how many books I write, she will always be my crowning achievement. She's just so real to me. It's unrealistic
She
how
feels
real
real
she
to
is.
me now as well.
Well, I never shut up about her, so that's probably why. But
Mhm.
so when I was writing Wicker Hill, it was like it didn't come to me to actually start writing the story until after I saw Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse, which
Yeah.
is that film basically like smacked me in the face and said, "It's time. It's time to write Wicker Hill." Because Wicker Hill, like there's a lighthouse on a hill. There has been way before the lighthouse was ever released. There was always a lighthouse on the hill, which gives the city the name Wicker Hill. It's because of that hill that the lighthouse is on. And after I saw that movie, it's Lovecraftian,
Hmm.
but it's still character driven
Hmm.
and it's dark, but there's also like this melancholy to it. There's this like
Yes.
humor. There's a lot of humor to it. I mean, they've got fart jokes in it. So I just want to preface, I think Lighthouse is one of the greatest movies I've ever seen. I legitimately do. Robert Eggers, every time he releases a movie, he just blows my mind. But after watching The Lighthouse, it was like it's time to write Wicker Hill. So that sense of humor and that sense of humor is very much in the story. There's a point where she gets a literal cursed artifact. And in a horror story, she should put it on and she should let it lead her. but she puts it on and she sees like this flash of like tangled flesh and everything else. And she goes, nope. And she just takes it off and puts it in her pocket because I wanted to avoid those. I wanted to avoid as much as possible those tropes that you see in horror that turn someone into just a final girl.
Yeah.
I didn't want her to just be a final girl. I wanted her to be this character that's strong and also incredibly vulnerable. She has moments in the story where she's incredibly vulnerable. And you're sitting there just rooting for her. Come on, Abigail, just a little bit further, as opposed to, oh, she's going to survive. At times, you're like, I don't know if she will. And those little moments where she like stops someone from walking away right when they're about to say something important. Like there's a moment in the story where Tommy Calloway, the character named after you, um, he's about to do that mysterious guy thing where she asks a question and he gets up to leave, like you see in movies or read in books.
Mm.
And she stops him and she goes, no, 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 no. I've seen these movies. I know how this goes. And she says, you're not leaving without telling me what's going on. So she has a lot of agency. It was very much my goal to make her a character with agency and vulnerability and
Mm.
strength and humor and beauty and an understanding of the world in the midst of her own trauma and family trauma, really.
And Alexandra Daddario was the sort of she's your ideal actress to play her in an adaptation, and even just
Yeah.
I whatever you describe Abigail, I picture her in mind as well because I mean I've seen her in definitely in the Percy Jackson films and a couple of other things as well, and again she has that quality where she would just like take this role and just play it so many different ways, and you would
Yeah.
just be amazed.
Yeah, and it's funny, but she's actually the reason Abigail exists because I was a huge fan of the Witcher video game series and
Oh, of
books,
course, yeah.
Geralt and Yennefer and Triss, and I was absolutely in love with Yennefer. After Witcher 3 came out, I was a fan of the books first, but after Witcher
Oh,
3 came out,
really?
I was,
Mhm.
yes. The Last Wish is one of the reasons I wanted to be a writer. The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski is still one of my favorite books ever. But when Witcher 3 came out and you got to see all the characters in PS4 graphics and everything else, I saw Yennefer and I'm like, she's just beautiful. Like the black hair and the black robe and the magic to her and the violet eyes. And I literally was sitting there, and this was before I got the real discipline to start writing. But this is when Wicker Hill was born, was this moment here. Is like I saw Yennefer and I remember The Last Wish because I was a huge reader at the time. And I was like, I want to write a character that feels like Yennefer looks. So I started looking up like actresses with dark hair and bright eyes, like
Mhm.
just that, you know what I'm talking about, that mythical, like witchy look. And that was the first time I ever saw Alexandra Daddario was on a Google search.
Yeah,
I'd
she's
never
known
seen
for
any
the
of her
known for
movies.
those striking eyes, yeah.
Right. And I'd never seen any of her movies or anything. And the second I saw her, I was like, I could write 1,000 books about how beautiful this woman is. And after I saw her, I was like, I could write 1,000 books about her. So I just kept that picture of her on my computer, like on my desktop in a note. And I just kept that picture and I kept looking at her, trying to get ideas, getting ideas, getting ideas. And one day I was testing out Photoshop on my new laptop and I made this fake movie poster. And it said Wicker Hill at the bottom. And because it was a hill with a lighthouse on it, and there was a tentacle wrapped around it, around the lighthouse. And it's just called Wicker Hill. And at the top it said, even death may not, or even death may die, which is a Lovecraftian quote about Cthulhu. And when I was looking at it, I was like, a movie poster usually has an actor's name over the title to tell you who's playing in it. And Alexandra Daddario's name, I just put it there. And that was literally the birth of Wicker Hill. And that was 12 years ago. For a fake movie poster with an actress I'd never seen in a movie and just Wicker Hill. Like, and it's turned into this, you know, and
Mhm.
already one sequel and two more to go. So it's like, you never know when you're going to get that inspiration. And she was mine. She was the inspiration for Wicker Hill. So one of the things I'm curious about is that before we get away from Wicker Hill, is I want to know, or before we get away from that topic, I want to know, have you ever seen something or seen someone who inspired you that quickly to want to immediately write something?
Well, actually, yeah, the first short I ever made was back in 2017. It was a short called Aaron, and I met this actor called Thomas Fitzgerald in a screen combat class who has like these really stunning green eyes, and but like again had that sort of ethereal quality. and he just gave off this sort of James Dean bad boy vibe, and I was just like, I have to work with him. So I wrote a story where the two of us were playing half brothers, and we basically kind of became those characters. And I still have to remind myself that I'm not related to him since then. But yeah, the film was made, and it was looked like a filmmaker's first film, but it went up on YouTube and got like 160,000 views or something, and we were just like, who the hell is watching this?
But that's amazing though. That's
Mhm.
it's amazing how you can get inspiration like that. Me and Olivia and I talk about it all the time. You'll probably hear Olivia's name a lot during this conversation because
That's only fair.
when I'm talking to Olivia, you hear Bobby's name a lot in conversation. So, um, but it's crazy how you can get inspiration like that
Mhm.
because, like with Wicker Hill, like these two books, even though I've wanted to be a writer since third grade, these two books would not exist had I not seen that picture of Alexandra Daddario. So it's like, what I mean even these two books would not exist had I not met you because you inspire me to be creative. As we've said before, you are my muse. So you are so much of an inspiration to me creatively, and you without knowing it, you poke and prod me to want to create. And it's a very powerful thing to have for someone like me who is when creatively I'm a massive procrastinator. I want to write, but I don't want to write. You know what I'm saying? Like
Oh, I
I
know
want to
exactly what you're saying. Yeah.
I want my book to come out my brain like this, done.
Yeah,
That's what I
I'm the
want.
same.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I'm talking to you and I'm shooting you ideas and we're bouncing ideas off each other, the creative process becomes reactionary. I'm like, oh, Bobby's doing this. That makes me want to do this.
Mhm.
So
And it's
I
mutual
think
as
it's
well.
amazing.
Like, I mean, I don't think I would have actually sat down to write Joanna and the 12 Crowns if I hadn't been, hearing you talking about Wicker Hill and all this as well. And because I had already, written The Shallow Ocean and was getting it ready for publishing, but I didn't know kind of where I wanted to go next because I'd
Right.
written other books that I'd never, found the nerve to publish. So I think it was definitely that idea just kind of I had the idea 10 years ago and again very similar and just
Yep.
hearing you kind of you're just pitching everything and you're telling me like this idea you have for this sequence and giving me all this inspiration and hell even you were planning the sequel while you were still writing the first one and kind of halfway through Joanna and the 12 Crowns I was like, "Ooh, this character should get their own sequel and then this one as well." So it's
Yep.
definitely we help each other out in so many ways.
Yeah. And it's funny because like when I was working on Wicker Hill, I went ahead and made the cover art for this one before Wicker Hill was ever even done. So this cover art was already made and the first one wasn't even published yet. But just new, man. Like once Wicker Hill got to a certain point, I was like there's so much story here to tell. Like this is a literary epic. It's not just a pocketbook, you know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
it's not going, there's too much to it. And I think just like with you and Joanna and the 12 Crowns, it's like you've got so many characters. Your ensemble's so big, there's no telling what you could do with it. Like there's no telling where you could take those characters. And I mean, I've got a side character in Wicker Hill that I was just expecting to be a side character, and now I want to write a spinoff for him. So it's like, that kind of stuff just comes out of nowhere and you get that inspiration as you're writing. And a lot of the times your characters give it to you.
And they also, there's the saying that I heard years ago where it says, you're the average of the five people you hang around with. And this was a saying to motivate actors to, be better at managing their careers, saying, if you hang around with five, broke out of work actors, then you'll be the sixth. And so it's like you should surround yourself with people who inspire you and motivate you. And so
Yeah.
that's well, I think that's what we've done because I may as well shout out two other YouTubers who are also working on stuff. And I haven't known them that long, but we were sort of like a nice trinity of kind of we talk about the same things. There's the Wicked Merman who he does a lot of Disney videos as well, and
Hello, humans.
I just have fun memories of like whenever I watch his videos, he bleeps his curse words out with like a
If you disagree, that's fine. Just don't be up about it.
he did a live to celebrate getting to 4,000 subscribers a couple weeks ago. So congrats on that, buddy. And he was just telling me about like the book he's making, and it just sounds so cool as well because he's a big fan of. You might have missed Winx Club when it was on, but like he's big fan of
I
that.
know what
So
it is. I know what
yeah,
it is.
and Then there's also Klaxon, who is just incredible.
So many stories start with the hero going on a mini adventure that parallels the climax of the movie later.
And she's also working on a project for herself. And from what she's shared, it sounds amazing. Like it's based on Swan Lake, and I was like, oh, I got something based on Swan Lake in the works as well. And she was the one I had in mind to play Princess Tannis, and if Joanna and the 12 Crowns ever got made.
So why don't you tell us first off what was the trigger that made you think, okay, this is the story I want to write?
Yeah, as I said earlier, it was 10 years ago that I kind of first started thinking of it because there was a show called Once Upon a Time that was on, and I was obviously, grown up with the Disney Renaissance films, and I'd always been fascinated with fairy tales and like any sort of like, weird fairy tale films like The Company of Wolves, Snow White, A Tale of Terror, and even something like Snow White and the Huntsman. Like that sort of stuff always intrigued me, like the way you can just retell fairy tales and,
Right, right.
because they're meant to be retold, like they've been passed down for hundreds of years. Like, yeah, and so there was a fairy tale that I remember I used to have this book that was as a kid had all these fairy tales in it, and the illustrations were so beautiful. Like it wasn't like cartoony illustrations, they were like beautiful, like classical Renaissance paintings, or at least that's how they looked when I was a kid. I hope we still have it because I just love it. And one fairy tale was the 12 Dancing Princesses. And so I was reading about that one day. I was Wikipediaing it. And I just like, oh yeah, I remember really liking this story. And so I checked out, had it ever been adapted? And it hadn't really. Like, though, do you remember a series called Fairy Tale Theatre? Produced by Shelley Duvall, like it's one of her best achievements. Yeah, they did an episode, and I noticed that the Wikipedia note said that it knocked the 12 Sisters down to six, and that just kind of made me feel very disappointed. And I was like, oh,
Mm,
yeah, I suppose it'd be really hard to do an adaptation with 12 characters. And so I kind of started thinking, well, like, how would I do a story with 12 main characters? And so it kind
right.
of started there. And I think it was one night, I mean, I was in my room and I just out of nowhere kind of either got an idea or just jumped up and started actually improving, a couple of scenes. It's I think it was actually the scene that takes place in the first chapter where okay, so main character is Joanna. Like she's a dressmaker's assistant, and there's a mysterious palace in the town that is overlooking them. And she's, has to repair a dress one day or make alterations to it. And she gets a package, and within the dress, she finds a note that just says "Help me." And so I just was like, okay. So coming up with like all these, okay, so why does this princess need help? Okay, so why is the enchantment happening? Like why are the characters doing all this? So it's all about just kind of, answering these own questions in my head and also just the logistics behind how do you tell a story with 12 main characters? The answer, make six of them sisters, six of them, foreigners, and make the six sisters the antagonists. So, okay, you've got six villains, and it's like, okay, so what's the dynamic now? So that's basically where the idea originated from 10 years ago.
Like at that size of an ensemble
Hmm.
is intimidating to me. I have a few ideas that I want to write that might have,
Hmm.
six, seven characters, but 12, I don't think I can
Hmm.
handle it. But I know you love to base your characters off people you know,
Hmm.
maybe physically or with traits.
Hmm.
Does that help you write this large ensemble of characters, knowing who is who, or knowing
Yeah,
what face is
definitely.
on which character? Yeah.
I think it probably comes from my time in pro wrestling as well, where because like when I first started out, I knew I wasn't going to be a gimmick guy. Like back then they really wanted everyone to have a gimmick. Like we had a guy who had a pirate gimmick. That was what he did in every show. And I kind of knew that wasn't me. I was more of a character guy. And but I knew each person needs to kind of have that one thing that, the audience sees that and like, oh, that's their thing. Like Beth Phoenix had the headband and Trish Stratus had the cowboy hat and I had the orange bandana and I wore a dog tag and I had spiky hair and I shouted out oi oi oi. There were times where you'd have to, put together 8-man tag matches or 10-man tag matches and they're so much harder than 6 men. So and you have to just like make sure each partner, gets something to kind of like pace the
Right.
match and kind of justify why they're out there as well. And other people have said that, whenever I send people my scripts to read, like it was actually Harley who designed the cover image that you see behind me. she said, after reading, the umpteenth script I sent her, she says, "You are really good with like large groups of characters." It definitely
That's
helped with the 12 princesses, where it's like, okay, I made two of them twins, so okay, that's two down already. That's one thing that makes them stand out. And I made
right.
Judith the silent character, so that's another kind of person to who you don't necessarily need to account for, but you still have to make sure that she makes her presence felt in ways without speaking.
Right. So what you're basically doing is you're giving every single one of these characters a trait that is noticeable by the reader, so
Mhm.
they don't have to constantly know where that person is, because you can just say she stood silent in the corner, and
Mhm.
that's good enough, because that is who she is, or that is who
Mhm.
she needs to be for the scene. I have a scene at the end of Wicker Hill where one of my characters just completely gets kind of like sidelined because he's not the most important character and he's not the focus of that scene. So he kind of has to be forgotten because the focus of the scene is so imperative, important, like, it is the entire point of the book, that he just has to be forgotten for a scene. And I had a really hard time coming to terms with the fact that he just has to fall and go away
Mhm.
because the spotlight was on a specific place. He needed to go, exit stage right. So with 12 characters and you being able to put a face on each one of these characters is, I mean, that makes complete sense to me, because as a reader, those little traits I can latch onto and go, I mean, that one trait could be everything I need to relate to a character. Because if
Mhm.
you're a quiet person, you're immediately going to relate to the person who's quiet while everybody else is dancing around and acting chaotic.
Mhm.
So that's awesome. That's great for that many characters. And I mean, I have no doubt that you can do it too, because you're just, good at everything. So
No, cheers. And I'm trying to, yeah. And since I have a lot of characters who are different races as well, I know a lot of people avoid writing that because they're afraid of getting it wrong. But I found, again,
right.
writing for a specific person in mind, kind of, that helps you kind of get away from the pressure to, oh, I have to make sure I'm, representing this well, and you kind of end up with a cipher rather than a character. So where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, Princess Imani, who will be the main character of the second book, she's the princess from the East African inspired kingdom. So, but I just thought straight away of the wrestler Naomi, who actually just announced her pregnancy this week. So,
Yeah.
congratulations.
I was going to ask you if you knew about that, but yeah.
I'm going like on how she was portrayed on Total Divas as just like the voice of reason, who everyone loved and just had this firm, true-hearted wisdom.
Well, it wasn't like I was maliciously trying to do it.
Yeah, you were.
And that was sort of
Right.
like my in point, and then I just kind of developed Imani as her own person kind of outside of that. I just thought, okay, so she's from like this far off kingdom. Why is she here? What brings her to this place? And it's like, okay, so she loves myths and legends and fairy tales. Like, oh, that means she'll be useful when, they need someone with knowledge of that later. So it's all like, and again, it's
Right.
all kind of developing from there. And I had, like you, I had an actress in mind straight away, Precious Mustafa, who's a great British actress and really should get more work. And so I was basically just kind of writing with her in mind. So that way I'm writing for her. And so it's not, she's her own person.
To avoid the archetypes and the stereotypes and
Hmm.
people saying, "Oh, you just wrote, a typical, whatever."
Hmm.
It helps you completely avoid that, because you can literally just say, "Well, she's just Naomi,
Hmm.
but she likes myth." And it's like, and that keeps your story more grounded as well, because
Hmm.
you're basing them off real people,
Hmm.
as opposed to just trying to create this super, you're not trying to create Optimus Prime. You're just saying, "Oh, this is Finn Balor. This is Fergal Devitt." His abs are perfect, but he's not. So
I mean,
it,
I've
it
met
gives
him.
you,
I would discount that he is perfect. Oh, hang on, discount means no. I mean, I would say he is. Like very captivating. Hmm.
but that gives you this, when you have the face to put on the character,
Hmm.
just like with Abigail. It's like you immediately relate to the character in a way that you just go, this person's human.
Hmm.
Now if you're creating a character from scratch, which there's nothing wrong with, and millions of people have done it, you have to create that character without any humanity really visible in that character. Like there's no humanity present as you're creating the character. And it's not until the character is fully fleshed out. But when you can have that character have a face, have mannerisms, that gives that character a very solid foundation in the world that you put them in, no matter how crazy the world is. And it makes them perfect vessels for the reader as well. So you've got 12 of them.
And another thing with like writing for the specific person, like that also sort of helps because that's something I got into the habit of it, just writing roles for myself to play where it's I hate auditioning people, and so I always prefer writing the role for an actor I know or kind of their energy
Right.
I have in mind. So in some ways that helps you kind of maintain character voice because you've got an idea in your head of who you're writing for. So it's like, okay, this person wouldn't say this, or this person would say that, and that almost helps, when you have an exposition scene and you have to work out, okay, which character is most likely to say this and give this information or come to this conclusion.
No, it makes complete sense. Like if you use Hulk Hogan, for instance, as a writing template, you know, it completely changes the way you
Mm.
write the character. You wouldn't write Hulk Hogan as a very like sophisticated, well-spoken guy. You would write him as a red-skinned, like screaming at the top of his lungs type of character. It's just the way
Hmm.
you would do it. And I think like just like with Abigail, of course, I'm gonna bring her up again. Just like with Abigail, it's like when I'm writing with Alexandra Daddario in my head, it's like she's got a sense of humor.
Hmm.
She's obviously a gorgeous woman, and she's also got this. She has proven that she can very much act out trauma. In her last few shows, like The White Lotus and her most recent show, The Witches. I can't think of what the name of it is, but it's The Witches of something. She's proven that she has a very like deep rooted trauma she can pull out somehow. And that makes it really easy to write those scenes. Like whether she's joking around with her brother Asher or if she's, going to her mother's grave, it's like having that picture in your head tells you in a lot of ways, okay, this is how that character acts. And I think it's just for me personally, I have to do it. Like I'm to that point now, I just have to.
Did you say there was a similarity you found out between her and Abigail after you'd written it?
Oh, there's a dozen. I'm actually glad you asked because I love talking about this. It's so crazy.
I'd
So
forgotten about it, so.
I don't believe in coincidences.
Mhm.
I'm not a coincidence person. And so Alexandra Daddario played in Baywatch, but there's a scene in that movie where she is hiding with The Rock inside of a morgue drawer. The entire second book of the Wicker anthology is called The Morgue. She literally wakes up inside of a morgue drawer. Um, so in Wicker Hill, the character Tommy Calloway, the one that's named after a very handsome man, he is played in my fan casting. He is played by Theo James, who you and I both love. We
We
both
love him,
love
yeah.
Theo James. Yeah. So
He's in the White Lotus
Theo,
as well, isn't he?
that's exactly where I was going. Yes, he plays in The White Lotus, which she also played in. The character or the actor that I have pegged to play her brother Asher is this one's like the craziest to me because I only found this out recently, but it's Tyler Hoechlin. Tyler Hoechlin is the character or is the actor that I have for a very long time had in place to play Asher, her twin brother. They played in a movie together. They have like incredible chemistry, so it would be perfect for the movie. She plays in a show where she's a witch. Abigail is descendant from witches, but you don't find that out until like maybe the fourth book. I haven't decided yet, but she's descendant from witches. It's just like, and that's not even all of them. Like there's more, but I can't think of them all.
Mhm.
But like all of these coincidences, and like what Olivia said was, it's almost like her career um, mirrored the creation of Abigail because all that stuff happened after Abigail like was created. But all of those things that happened in her career happened after. Oh, and in San Andreas, the movie San Andreas, where she also played with The Rock, she drowns. Which there's a scene in Wicker Hill where there's actually multiple scenes in Wicker Hill where she drowns or almost drowns because I have thalassophobia, so it's a phobia that I also write a lot So I just have a fear of large bodies of water, which is probably why I love Lovecraft. So there's just a bunch of tiny little things, but there's also some really big ones. And it's just really, if you don't believe in coincidence, they're very odd. And Olivia said, "Well, that just proves everything. It just proves you chose the right person." Well, I guess she chose me in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, I had a minor one, like very minor compared to yours, but when I was writing Princess Aaliyah in Joanna and the 12 Crowns, who will get her own book as well, I was just fleshing her out, and she's from the Middle Eastern inspired kingdom, and I based her, she was named after another wrestler as well called Noof Al-Aribi, who was in the WWE as the character Aaliyah. Since she's from a desert kingdom, oh, she loves riding her horse through the desert, and she'll talk about how she misses her horses more than she misses her own family. And so I put that detail in, and then I think I found Noof on TikTok, and I just saw her just posting loads of videos where she's riding her horse every day. I was like, oh, well, she's a horse rider too.
Yep, that answer, hey, that should justify it. Like it helps
Hmm.
justify what you're doing as a writer. And
Hmm.
so going back to your characters, since we're still talking about since we're
Hmm.
talking about the princesses,
Hmm.
what about the dudes?
Yeah, cool. Because in the original fairy tale, the 12 Dancing Princesses, there's a series of missing princes. I think there's 12 of them there, but like I've knocked it down to six because there's six kidnapped princes who it's a big plot point like why they've been kidnapped. And I was just kind of I think I was just trying to like pick names for them, and I named one of them Prince Cody after you. And then,
Mm,
I can't just like have like characters with names. I have to work out, okay, what do they look like? Like, what are they like as
right.
people? And so it's
Yeah.
kind of like trying to give them like these little bits as well. And like, again, basing them on various people. Like, there's another prince called Cedric, who I just named after my friend Cedric Gagel, who basically he's like you, Cody. Again, he could throw up on a woman and she'd say, do it again. Um, there's small roles in this book, but it's like I was like, okay, like how if thinking of like getting these actors to play these roles, like okay, I can't just ask them to play small roles. So the idea of like writing sequel books for Imani and Aaliyah, I was like, okay, more books for this prince, and then just yeah, and so I have a lot of fun kind of figuring them out, and two of them will become major characters in the second book as well, focusing on Imani. That was how I could have found one of them. Like there's a very sort of Hispanic inspired prince called Johann, and who's kind of inspired off a guy I knew a few years ago who was called that. And he just, the way he, introduced himself and just like the way he carried himself, it was just so memorable. And I was like, I'm going to have to put you in a book one day. And
Also, the name Johann, that's a great name. Johann is
yeah,
a great name.
and I was
It's a,
really thinking of David Alvarez, who played Bernardo in Spielberg's version of West Side Story, and just has this edge to him, but also this sort of, well, I mean, he's a musical theater guy, so he has this kind of elegance as well. So I just knew straight away that he had to be Imani's love interest in the second book. I was just like, yes, those two characters fit so well together. I'm writing that at the moment, so I've had a lot of fun fleshing that out. And then there's another prince called Darius, who is based on my friend in the UK, Jason Darling Lynch, who's just a very cool guy. And again, I wanted to do something with him as well. So he's the love interest of her sister, who becomes a main character in the second book as well. And well, we all know who I based her father on.
Mensa.
The sentiment is well received.
Again, as I said before, it would be a dream for him to read this and go, "This is the role I've been waiting my entire career for."
Right. Yeah, I feel the exact same way about Alexandra Daddario, of
Hmm.
course. Also Willem Dafoe, because I have Willem Dafoe to play, pegged to play a character named Silas in Wicker Hill, and he's
Oh, I love that
instrumental for
name.
the entire. Yeah, Silas Hibbins. It's a very Harry Potter kind of name, but I
Hmm.
love it, Silas Hibbins. But he's always been
Hmm.
Willem Dafoe, always. And of course, like I said earlier, the inspiration from The Lighthouse. It's like Willem Dafoe is one of my favorite actors, but
He's fantastic,
um,
yeah.
yeah, he's so good. But I feel the same exact way. And it's like once you get that idea in your head that you want that person to play it, it's hard to picture anybody else in that role.
Hmm.
And there's no one else like Peter Mensa. We love our Peter Mensa, man.
Hmm.
We love our Spartacus actors, every single one of them.
Of
Well,
course. I even
um,
have a geeky idea because if this was made with my Dreamcast, I would obviously play Alex, and there is a sequence where he's kind of remembering his father because his father died in a fire when he was 8, I think. Yeah, and I thought, if we made that, we'd have like a flashback, and it would be so fun to have Liam McIntyre cameo as the father.
Yep, that would be great.
He is far too young and pretty to play my dad, but
Right, right,
movie
right.
magic, fairy tale world.
Right, right. Fairy tale world. And flashbacks. You can always have fun with a flashback. And de-aging, if this does happen
He
when he's
has not
60, you can
aged since
always
Spartacus. He still,
right.
I remember I tweeted him last year saying like, I refuse to believe you're 41, like 26 at the oldest.
Yeah, and I mean like look at Peter Mensa. Like what is he now? 56? Something
He's in
like
his
that.
60s. He was in his
Holy
50s when he did Spartacus.
that's ridiculous. I
Because like
used to
Nick,
think
oh
I
sorry, you go
used to
ahead.
think like he wears that leather armor, and I used to think I'm like, why the hell are you wearing that armor? Like his skin looks harder than the armor he wears. Like the Onomaus like breastplate. Like he takes that off at one point, and you're just like, why are you even wearing armor? Like
Nick
you're made of
Itarabe
steel.
said that was their reaction on set. Like he wore the vest for the first few episodes of Blood and Sand, and they figured, okay, well
Yeah.
he's in his 50s, maybe he's got a bit of a gut. And then for when Animeus strips off to show his scars, says the set just went silent while they just stared at just like how beautiful Peter Mensa's body was.
And plus he's a fantastic actor, so I
Oh,
mean like you can't go
yeah.
wrong with him. You just can't go
Hmm.
wrong. So since we talked about the princesses, we talked about the princes, we talked about the inspiration. So what is the overall narrative arc? How does it differentiate from the fairy tale? Because you said one of the whole things that you love is the rewriting of the fairy
Hmm.
tale and the retelling of it. And you've talked to me about your Lost Boys story, which I think is just fantastic.
Hmm.
But the script. But how does this one differentiate from the fairy tale?
Well, it's definitely more of an action adventure vibe anyway, because in the fairy tale it's like there's one soldier who kind of, sneaks along and tags along to find out what these princesses are up to, and then, he outs them and like wins the challenge at the end. Whereas here it's drawn out, and the Spartacus influences are very obvious because there is a big battle, and I even completely rip off slash homage, you can decide which one it is. The
Right.
shield jump at
Mhm.
the in Kill
Good
Them
man,
All.
good man.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's my Bobby. I knew it.
I know for Joanna anyway, I was inspired by kind of a few other friends of mine where and they have this feminine side to them, but they were more comfortable around boys, like they kind of grew up not necessarily as a tomboy, but they had this feminine side and they've kind of never really had a chance to, nurture that or kind of like have female friends. Because like Leanna, my counselor, she says when you get a ride or die female friend, you hold on to her because they're hard to come by. And so it's sort of like Joanna is she's searching for a sisterhood. So it's like kind of found family tends to sort of, pop up in all my stories. So it's definitely kind of crept its way into this as well. And I'm not a fan of, this trend of revisionist fairy tales that we've been saturated with for like the last, well, it's well over
Yeah.
10 years now. And I almost just sort of like, not necessarily a throwback, but like I just like a reconstruction. Was like I just like a classical fairy tale, kind of in the same way that the 2015 remake of Cinderella was, where it's these stories were meant to give people hope, and they were kind of very thrilling and exciting as well. So I was just kind of hoping to recreate that and kind of put my own spin on that. And I take inspiration from Dominus Stephen DeKnight, where he says, "I just make stuff that I think would be cool to watch, and I put stuff in there that I find appealing." So that is kind of the approach I have as well.
And I think, like, I've heard you multiple times say love interest. And I think that's one thing where the fairy tales have fallen apart over the
Hmm.
last 10, 20 years. It's like there's no romance at all.
Yeah, and the
And
reason is because films have become more content now, and they apparently I got this secondhand, but apparently they polled the little girls and they said they don't want to see romance in movies anymore. And it's like it's fine, like you don't need because well, we know plenty of movies where they shoehorned in, a token romance just to prove that the male character wasn't gay. So like I'm all for, not having to shoehorn it in where it doesn't belong, but that doesn't mean you have to get rid of it completely. Because like I've been again very heavily influenced by the Disney Renaissance and even the classical films. Like I'm really appreciative of these love stories. Like Tarzan and Jane's love story just hits me so hard these days. And even just like the way the TV series continues it, like There is a lot. There are so many lines in there that are just getting me as a soft old adult now, where it's
Yes, there are just as many women as there are men.
Jane is the best.
Oh! Well, I suppose I fall in the middle somewhere.
No, Jane is the best.
In all honesty, that's kind of how I feel about The Mummy now. When I rewatch The
yes,
Mummy,
it's
it's like
such a good
they don't,
romance. Yeah.
yeah, they don't make mummies they don't make The Mummy anymore.
Hmm.
Like he is just he's the perfect swashbuckling.
Hmm.
Like he's snarky, he's funny, he's strong, he's good looking. He and her, she and her do not, or he and her do not, he and she, they do not get along at first, but they come to see each other's strengths.
Hmm.
They don't ignore each other's faults all the way up to the end. They're still like, he still thinks she's, hoity-toity or
Hmm.
posh or whatever you want to call her,
Hmm.
and she still thinks he's, dirty, and he is. And but they come to understand each other's strengths, and that makes The Mummy so. And I didn't appreciate The Mummy back then, I'll admit it. I
Hmm.
didn't appreciate it at the time, but
Oh, neither
rewatching it,
did
I'm like,
I.
this
Yeah.
is it's a masterpiece. Like it's perfect for what
And
it's trying to do.
And even in the screenplay, for the iconic library scene that introduces Evie to us, like in the character description, it describes what she's like, and the very last line is, "We're going to fall in love with her."
Yeah, that's good. That shows intent
Hmm.
instead of like being shoehorned. Like it shows intent by the writers. Like this is her purpose, and you don't have a choice. You
Hmm.
don't have a choice because you're going to like her that much, and you do, and him too.
Hmm.
Brendan Fraser's just he kills that one, and I'm so glad he's getting that. He's getting that
Exactly. Yeah.
career renaissance now. He deserves it so much after everything that happened to him. But that's definitely a tangent we got off. So do you want to go ahead and talk about Joanna some more? Or do you want to start talking about Imani and
Hmm.
that amazing story?
Oh yeah, I guess I'll talk about Amani then. For those who missed my casting video or, are wondering why I keep talking about a sequel, okay, the character Princess Amani, who she's not a main character in Joanna and the 12 Crowns. She's a supporting character who gets a bit, but she's kind of, well, the plot was already mapped out before I kind of, fleshed her character out, and I kind of was thinking, I really like this character. I have fun with this character. It's like she's too strong to just kind of, not do anything with. And
Right.
like
Yeah.
with whenever we do fantasy, we're still heavily based in European stuff. And Joanna and the 12 Crowns, it's an adaptation of 12 Dancing Princesses, but there's also like aspects from other European fairy tales. So I figured do a book on Imani where she's having adventures in her own kingdom and then draw from African fairy tales and folk tales.
And like you said, it's like African mythology has so much cool stuff, man. Like
Hmm.
they've got so many cool stories. And everybody knows, Norse mythology, everybody knows Greek mythology, Roman mythology, whatever. But it's like Africa is and this includes Egyptian too, because Egyptian stuff has kind of fallen out ever since, gods of Egypt. That seemed like the last attempt and nobody tried again. But there's so much mythology there that could be tapped into, and I think Imani's going to be great for that. And I'm really looking forward to the story. So I'm really interested to hear about it. So keep talking, and I'll shut up.
Yeah, and because my friend Lauren, who she actually has a script with a character called Silas coming out as well. I based Imani's younger sister, Princess Zuri, on her. So it's like if it was made into a film, it's like that's your role. And she's fun to write for as well. I remember kind of just sending her like the first few chapters, and she's like, "Oh, I love this." And she complimented me on like how the language was, like how that she's like, they sound like royals. How do you do that? And so, because the very first scene, well, I had so much fun writing the cold open because you don't know the names of her father and sister in Joanna and the 12 Crowns. So you start the prologue for Imani and the Lost City on from the perspective of King Omari, and he's looking for Zuri because she's been sleepwalking for many nights, and their castle's built on top of a waterfall, kind of inspired by the falls in Zambia. And so he finds her kind of on the edge of the water, like about to go in. And if you're a casual viewer, you're kind of wondering who these people are. And then he says, "Oh, I just had a letter about your sister." And then you reveal Amani is the sister, and then you join her perspective. And it literally
That's
picks
great.
up like from the very end of Joanna and the 12 Crowns. It's like an immediate sequel, like Underworld Evolution, to shoehorn in all the things we love.
We
And
could do a whole video on Underworld for sure.
she's just on a balcony with Prince Johann, and it's basically kind of the start of their attraction and them falling in love. And I had so much fun writing that. Like, I kind of because when you're doing a fairy tale, it's funny because you say I write fairy tale stuff a lot. And my background is actually kind of in very sort of naturalistic dialogue and trying to kind of, keep things like not too stylized. So this was different for me. So I'm trying to kind of, take a line and kind of like, how do I make it sound fairy tale, And it turns out writing romance is actually very fun.
I almost have to put romance into almost every one of my stories. It's
Yeah.
very like, and it doesn't always have to be romantic. It can be like just little hints of it or whatever.
Mhm.
But I think romance is one of my favorite genres to write. I mean, you know about the romance in Wicker Hill, or the Wicker anthology. It's transgressive, but it's there.
Mhm.
Um, I think romance and fairy tales specifically are so partnered. Like they go so well together. It's like
Mhm.
cake and icing. It's like, and because the unrealism, the lack of realism, the
Mhm.
fantastic
Mhm.
aspects of fantasy and fairy tales are just made for this unbelievable like romance. I don't
Mhm.
even know how to explain it, but it just fits so well. So I can
Mhm.
only imagine writing, as someone who writes romance and horror and sometimes fantasy and sci-fi, is like doing it in a fairy tale setting must be so much fun. Like
Yeah,
it's
because
just
have you
so
ever
open.
seen a film I've referenced it loads of times, The Thief of Baghdad?
No, but I have planned on watching it. I have it
Okay.
on my list.
Well, we'll have to do a watch party. What was this? Yeah, because the scene is literally the guy he sneaks into the princess's garden, and there's a fun bit of banter where she sees his reflection in the pool, and he pretends to be a genie at first.
Why have you come?
To see you,
I was about to bathe.
I'm waiting.
Bathe with you there?
They literally just fall in love within one conversation, and oh God,
Where have you come from?
From the other side of time. To find you.
and it's just like the
Oh,
two actors, they're all in, and the music, it's just like because it's a fantastical world, it's not real. You just go with it, and
right,
you love it, and
right.
that's what I have in mind whenever I try to write romance in that. And I also try to show romance that isn't often portrayed, like because the emotional through line of Imani and the Lost City is King Omari, who would be played ideally by Peter Mensah, right? His wife, Queen Demazana, who took her name from another African folktale, and she would be played by Debbie Morgan, ideally, who she disappeared 20 years ago because when Imani was a child, she sleepwalked like Zuri is now doing, and because the whole thing is they heard a voice calling to them, and so they sleepwalked to the edge of the water, and Demazana threw herself into the water to stop Imani from doing it, and she's been missing. They assume she was dead, and now that this is happening to Zuri, they're wondering, okay, we never found any trace of her in the water, okay, so there is a chance she could be alive. And they go on this trip to the jungle to try and find the lost city to see if Demazana is still alive. And it is just from the perspective of a man who, he lost the love of his life 20 years ago and he's adjusted, to life without her and gotten used to it. He finds out there's a possibility she might be alive, and it's like he is, you know, on that boat. He just knows he will not stop until he knows. And there was just one scene I wrote where, again, it's completely from his perspective, where it really got me, because he used to speak to the moon thinking, that was her. Now he's looking up at the moon. And he's like, well, I've been speaking to you all these years, but you might not be there. Like, where have you been all this time? And he's wondering, like, if I see her after 20 years, like, what's she going to be like? Is she going to have moved on? And do I want her to have, not moved on and waited 20 years for me? So it's just like, but, and there's going to be a big emotional thing kind of in the climax, and I'm really looking forward to getting to that part.
That I was just picturing, like we talk about how we write cinematically,
Hmm.
and how we're inspired cinematically. I pictured all of that like it was a
Hmm.
movie with Peter Mensah. I saw him on the boat. I
Hmm.
saw him talking to the moon. Yeah, he obviously, he can do it. Like he would absolutely nail. Yeah, that's awesome. He would absolutely nail that.
Because he gets cast a lot to do, well, because of his physique, he gets cast a lot to do the action stuff and kind of
Right.
bring the Frosty. And of course, he has that, but he also has that sensuality and that sensitivity to really, be a romantic lead. And, not a lot of people have tapped into that. Spartacus
No,
is the only thing I've seen that has.
yeah, and I completely agree because his scenes with Melita and Gannicus,
Hmm.
I'm talking about that like soulmate type romance, that
Hmm.
friendship romance.
Hmm.
It's like they are so a lot like you and me, where they're emotionally intelligent enough
Hmm.
to accept the fact that they love each other. That emotional intelligence in somebody who looks like he does,
Hmm.
I think it's off-putting for some people because it seems unrealistic. And it'll
Especially for
throw
black
you
actors who don't get those kinds of roles very often.
right, yeah, yeah. And I think what it does is it cuts a line in your what's it called? What's it called? Sense of disbelief. And like believe things that aren't realistic,
Hmm.
for the sake of story. And I think that simple thing is just too much for some people. But we know he can do it, and that would be just God, I
Hmm.
was picturing all of it. It's just so great.
But I'm not the only one who has another book in the works. I mean, you have like so many in the works already. So why don't you talk about Safe? Is that the one you want to talk about? Yeah.
Yeah, Safe is the one that I'm currently working on, and I already have this pulled up here just so I can show off my cover. Okay, so the book that I'm currently working on, because I decided to take a break after finishing The Morgue, which is the second book in the Wicker anthology. I decided, two in 1 year for that one series is enough. So I decided to take a break from it and work on something else. Now, Safe is a story. It's another genre mashup that just kind of came to me not that long ago, and I was like, I've just got to write it right now. It was just the one that just said I have to write it. And what it is it's a family, it's a domestic drama set in the middle of a zombie apocalypse. And the reason it's called Safe is because it's about this man and his daughter surviving after the zombie apocalypse. She was born as the world was kind of like falling into it. So it wasn't really over yet, but there were news, it was on the news and the hospitals were going crazy, stuff like that. She was born during that. And
So
he
true to real
literally,
life.
right. And he literally like takes her, runs, and just fights to survive until he gets to the top of the tallest building in the city. And on top of that building, there's this penthouse that they were planning on selling to, some person with way too much money, more money than sense, is what he says in the book. And he takes her all the way up the 60 floors to the penthouse at the top, and he raises her there for the next 11 years. She has no idea that the world has ended. She has no idea that there's a zombie apocalypse. She's up there in her penthouse apartment in the sky with a rooftop pool and a garden and a pet chicken named Louise who lays eggs. And she's never, from 60 stories, you can't see people in the streets because they're like, they're so tight, you can't even
Mhm.
see them. So she's lived her entire 10 years of her life having no concept of the fact that the world has ended. All she knows is that life is perfect. Her daddy keeps her safe and he makes her pancakes every morning. That's all she knows. So what happens is about midway through the story, some events occur that send him to the streets. He goes to the streets every once in a while, for supplies or, whatever he needs to do. And when he goes this one time near the middle of the book, he doesn't come back. So what she does is she breaks the one rule that she has, which is never go down. So she goes down to the street, finds out the truth. And of course, this creates such a dissension between both of them because she broke the rule, but he's been lying to her entire life to keep her safe. So from the second act on, it's all about this father and this daughter trying to come to terms with how one of them broke the promise and one of them lied, and both were done to keep the other safe. And of course, it ends in this culmination of it's like once again it's very character driven and
Of course.
it's very much about the growth of the characters. It has nothing to do with the zombies. The zombies are backdrop. They're dressing. It's all about Renly, the little girl, and her dad Andrew, who's named after my friend Kyle. His name's Kyle Andrew Hicks. I didn't start naming characters after people until you, by the way. I
That's what I do.
always came up with names.
Mhm.
But Tommy Calloway, like, is named after my other screenwriter friend and you. So,
Mhm. And
um,
I have a prince called Cody who's named after you. So, and another prince who's physically based on your appearance. That's Prince Robert, which is
right. But the
ironic.
names. The names have different,
Mhm.
personalities. But Renly is very much named after the whole bird in a cage. She's very much a bird in the cage. And with wrens are birds.
Mhm.
She has this like bird nest hair that's like always messy and curly, and no matter how much she brushes it, it just doesn't do any good. Her dad calls her Little Wing and Bird, and she's very everything about her is very much bird in the cage, and then about midway through the story she gets free, and then you get stuck between this, like, as the reader you get stuck between, like, do you agree with the dad for what he
Mhm.
did, or do you agree with her for breaking the promise? Like, she goes down to the street, realizes everything's completely different than she thought. And I'm so excited because I love character. I love characters so much, and I love dialogue so much. And writing a dialogue for an 11-year-old girl when you've never been an
Yeah.
11-year-old girl is a fascinating thing. But writing her dialogue is so much fun because I know, as an 11-year-old, especially one that's been sheltered as much as she has, that she's making friends with clouds. She's got imaginary friends, she's floating around in her rooftop pool without a care in the world. Like, she has nothing to worry about. Her dad provides everything. But what happens is, once that middle part hits, once that second act hits, it becomes very much, he can't keep her safe forever. And that's where the whole title Safe comes from. It's like, yes, she's safe, but how long? What happens in the middle part of the story just completely derails everything they know, everything he's built, everything she's lived through or hasn't lived through. And it all just culminates, and I'm so excited about it. It's going to be such a good book, especially if you love characters.
Well, Cody read FC Marrow. Before we go, I have to say, one of the people who has had a profound effect on my life, and safe to say, some of the stuff that I managed to do would not be possible without knowing this guy. And I am like a proud father every time I hear the latest pitch for the story or see a design for a cover or just anything he tells me, I'm just inspired in multiple ways every day. That's why I love this man with all my heart.
And I feel exactly the same way. Every time me and Olivia have a podcast on Fanword, I mention Bobby every
Hmm.
time.
That's the other
People
reason
who
I
watch
listen to
those
them.
just to see how many times you get mentioned, you mark them off. I mention all the time. It's like, people probably get tired of hearing about him, but I don't care. Like, I've never had friends that appreciated me enough to push me and motivate me like I have with you, and especially creatively. And you know how much that means to me, how much creativity means to me. So I very much appreciate that. And we are definitely going to have to do this again.
Okay, links should be in the description, guys. So thank you for listening to us and be well.